And we are live.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Newburyport Historical Commission meeting of the 8th of October, 2020, a virtual meeting. This is your chair, Glenn Richards. I'll start with a roll call so we can see who all is here. Peter McNamee?
Here.
Okay, Mr. Joe Morgan?
Here.
Okay, Ms. Patricia Pecknick, Vice Chair. Did we lose Patricia? I know she's here. Oh, you're muted, Patricia.
Okay, sorry, here, but I'm having bandwidth problems, so I stopped video until I see
Okay.
how the connection goes. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks for letting us know. Ron Ziemba?
Here.
Okay. Malcolm Carnwath, I don't think I see you in the thing. Let's see if I see him in attendees. I'm not seeing Malcolm. Okay, so I'm going to assume that Malcolm is out. I'll make a note to that. And we have our note taker also on the phone, Gretchen Joy and Andy Port, and our city planner, and Caitlin Sullivan also in the planning office. A couple of rules just to kind of be clear on the procedures and so forth. During deliberations, the commissioners are in what's known as the Zoom panel, so our audio will be enabled. The public and applicants, basically no one else, will be unmuted during that time. If there is a public hearing, and I expect there will be at least one, possibly more than one person at a time will be unmuted, and a similar unmuting goes for the applicant or the representative when it's their turn to present their project to the board. They will obviously be unmuted as well. Now, during a public hearing section, if you are in the audience and you want to make a comment, please use the Zoom function to raise your hand. And also don't forget to lower it once you've been recognized. And usually you will also have to, even if we unmute you, you will need to unmute yourself on your end, on your device. So please take a look around while you've got time now to figure out how to do that if you're not already familiar with it. And as with any other city public meeting, please identify yourself, your name and address, as per usual. The first item on the official agenda is 3 Hancock Street, and I believe Mead Tollerman and C, who I forget who the C stands for, is representing them, and also the second item, 490 Merrimack Street, for which a continuance has been requested. So, Andy, can you unmute Attorney Mead?
Sure. You want to take the continuance first?
Well, that's what I want to ask, if get her okay to move up 490 Merrimack to the first item, because I think we can deal with that very quickly.
Yes, that would be fine, Mr. Chair. So we'd request a continuance to your October 22nd meeting for 490 Merrimack Street, please.
Okay. Do I hear such a motion?
I move that we move 490 Merrimack to our next meeting as requested.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
Glenn, could we
Yes.
just clarify for the record the date and time certain, so the date of the meeting is?
Oh, sure. I thought that was mentioned. If not, it's October 22nd.
Thank you.
At 7 p.m.
Yes, the usual, right. Correct. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to continue without prejudice this matter to October 22nd at 7, or the meeting at 7 anyway. So I'll go through the usual roll. Peter McNamee?
Yes.
Okay. Morgan? Joe Morgan, you with us?
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Okay. Okay, Patricia?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Ron Ziemba?
Yes.
Okay, and Christopher Fay?
Yes.
Okay, did I miss anyone? Let's see. I think I got everybody, right? Oh, and I'm sorry, the chair. The chair is a yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. So as expected, that was relatively easily dispensed with. Let me make a brief note here. Bear with me just a moment. And we'll continue with 3 Hancock Street. Ms. Mead, will you be presenting for 3 Hancock Street?
My colleague, Libby Bowker, will be doing this with Scott Brown.
Okay. All right. So So why don't we, Andy, can you take care of switching the meeting around to accomplish that?
Yep.
And while you're doing that, I'll just say that this is a hearing for a determination of historical significance, and if it's deemed historically significant and properly preserved, there would be a demo plan review. The plan is to basically raise the roof. I think it's approximately 20 inches. And I'm sure we'll get an overview in a matter of seconds from Libby Bowker as to the nature of the project. And I know, even though typically by ordinance, the determination of historically significance, et cetera, is separate from the demolition plan review, that's okay. We've been handling these. I know that your presentation typically incorporates both, but that's fine. So why don't you go ahead, Ms. Bowker?
All right, can everybody hear me?
We can.
Excellent. So as Lisa said, my name is Libby Bowker. I'm an attorney at Mead, Tallerman and Costa. And tonight I represent the applicant, James Bork, for the proposal concerning 3 Hancock. Myself and Mr. Brown will walk through the pending proposal, the historical significance of the property, the existing conditions, and the proposed project. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. And I'll then ask this commission to take the following 3 actions that the chair kindly just outlined. The first is to confirm that this property is historically significant. The second is to determine whether this property should be preferably preserved. And then if so, third, approve the plans herein and release the property from demolition delay. Next slide, please. So this is a relatively simple project. It's proposing to just raise the existing roof height on the structure by 20 inches while maintaining its shape, pitch, and coverage. And while we do absolutely understand the gravity of roofline changes on historic buildings, this modification keeps the house intact while making it safe and livable, and it enables compliance with minimum mandatory ceiling heights underneath the Massachusetts Building Code. 7 feet 6 inches is required for ceiling height, and currently the tallest ceiling in the house is 6.5 feet. This raising the roof of 20 inches also allows the stairs to be less steep, making them much less dangerous. In addition to keeping the roof line exactly the same shape and dimensions as it is now, this proposal also keeps the central chimney and the center front entry of the house to preserve the historic character of the property. Unlike numerous applications I'm sure you've seen, this proposal is not to create a McMansion. We're not seeking any increase in floor area or gross square footage. We are actually maintaining the home's very modest 1,300 square feet of living area. We're not looking to add dormers or change the roof style, and we're not changing any other exterior dimensions. The applicant here is only looking to make the existing home livable and safe by meeting the basic building code. And I'd also like to note that every immediate abutter reviewed this proposal and has submitted signed letters agreeing that this change is in harmony with the neighborhood and will in fact enhance the area. Next slide, please. As I outlined before, we're asking the commission to take 3 actions. And the first is a determination of historical significance. So here we have some historical records. 3 Hancock Street is listed as contributary on the district data sheets, and it's noted as being constructed in or around the year 1800 or pre-1800. There is a discrepancy between the assessor's records, which note the construction date of, I believe, 1853, but we're accepting this contributory status on the district data sheets with a pre-1800 date for this application. Next slide, please. So we also here have included a series of maps. The next 6 slides show the property in Newburyport on maps from 1851, next 1884, 1894, 1900, 1906, and 1914. And this supports a finding that the property is historically significant. Next slide, please. So existing conditions, as I mentioned before, this house was built in or around 1800. The house currently has vinyl siding and a gross floor area of just over 2,000 square feet with a living area of about 1,300. The tallest ceiling height in the house is 6'6", and both the first and second floor finished spaces. And as mentioned, this is in the R2 zoning district and the demolition control overlay district. Next slide, please. For an overview of the spatial relationships of this home compared to neighboring properties, here's a site plan. Notice that directly to the right, the property is situated next to a much larger home, kind of emphasizing the modest size of this property. I'm now going to turn it over to architect Scott Brown to discuss the existing plans and the proposed plans in more detail.
Well, thank you, Ms. Bowker. I presume everybody can hear me okay.
Yes.
3 Hancock Street is a structure with a lot of issues, which is no surprise given the age of it. As mentioned, we have a first floor ceiling height of slightly less than 6'6". Some of the areas in the back of the house at the second floor level are actually less than 6'6". They're actually 5'11". And these existing condition drawings that we have in front of us, you can see, if we were to zoom in, we could see where that 6'6" line is. And we can see how the roof at the back of the house slopes down, really crunching sort of the livable area at the back of the house. So a ceiling, a space with a ceiling height of 5'11" is not livable space by anyone's standards. Keep in mind that a standard door size today is 6'6". Actually, that's code minimum. Standard door size today is 6'8". Code minimum is 6'6". So it's pretty tight. So this is not the first time that I've had a project with low, unworkable ceiling heights, but this building certainly represents the worst that I've ever had to deal with. In some of those past projects, we were able to drop the first floor level, reframing it to gain more ceiling height at the first floor. With this project, we're not able to do that, and we're not able to do that because the first floor level is already too close to the ground. It's as close as 6 inches in some locations, and I wouldn't be surprised to find, once we peel back some of the siding here, that I wouldn't be surprised to find that a lot of the sills on this house are rotted because of that and need to be replaced. So in some of those past projects, some of the other things that we've been able to do is we've been able to raise the second floor level also by reframing that and creating some additional height at the second floor through dormers or a dormer. So with this house, if we could just go to page, yes, there we go. So with this house, a dormer is simply not an option. The back half of this house, or back 2/3 of this house rather, have a very low pitch roof. It's a 2/12 pitch. So a dormer on a 2 pitch essentially means a flat roof and not a dormer, in my opinion. And I think that solution would be a disaster by anyone's design standard. Andy, could we go to page 26, A2.1?
Scott, is that the first drawing we showed earlier, I think?
Yeah, it's actually page 20, page 26. It should be page 26. These are our proposed elevations that were included with our submission. There we go. So these are our proposed elevations that were included with our submission. So, we're in a position where we don't have really any other good options but to alter the existing roof lines. All of our really unworkable ceiling heights are at the back of the house at the second floor level. And again, where we have ceiling heights of less than 6'6" or actually less than 6 feet. Can we go to the next sheet, the page 27? So although not ideal, we are able to work with the roof lines at the front of the house. Our proposal maintains the existing eave line location at the front. maintains all of the existing openings at the front facade, and actually all of the roof at the front of the house as well. We are, however, going to extend that roof upwards 20 inches, as we can see in this drawing, to create a new ridge line that will actually meet the new roof lines of the back of the house. So even with that additional roof height of 20 inches, this still will remain the smallest house by far on this street. So if we could we go to page 20, which is sheet A2.2. Okay, so this is, I've put together an additional sheet, which is in front of us as part of this presentation. This was not included with our original submission. This is a sheet that shows some of the other alternatives that we explored, when arriving at the proposal before you this evening. All of these options involve a roof line change. So the bottom right is the proposal before you this evening. Option A to the left of that is one of the first things we looked at. And in this option, what we simply did is we took the back 2/3 of the house, lifted the roof, kept the existing roof pitch of that 2-pitch, lifted it to a point where we were able to get a workable ceiling height at the back of the house of 7 feet. And at the same time, we were able to sort of keep it down from the existing ridge about a foot. So this didn't look very good to us. So we moved on to option B, which is in the upper right-hand corner. So with this option, what we did is we increased the roof pitch. We maintained the 7 feet of head height at the back of the house, and we increased the roof pitch to a slightly over 2 pitch, and we actually met the existing ridge line at the front of the house. So we found that not to be very desirable as well, because we thought that, we lost some character here. And then we went to option C, and this is where we started to get to something that was a little bit more palatable to me. So with option C, again, at the back of the house, we have 7 feet of head height, which is we think the minimum workable head height is at the back of the house. And here we extended the back side of the existing roof, 812 at the 812 pitch. We extended it a little bit more. In order to get that, we actually had to decrease the roof pitch to something less than a 212 roof pitch. So what we end up here with is a roof on the back of the house that is pretty darn flat, or close to flat. So then we came back to the proposal that's before you this evening, which is the one that's in the lower right-hand corner, the bottom right. And this is in fact what we're proposing. So what we've done here is that we've maintained the roof pitch at the back of the house as is. We thought it was very important that the back half of the original box have some roof pitch that sloped down to meet that 212 pitch. And you can actually see that, the red line there that we're showing is the outline of the existing house. So I think this is by far the best of these 4 options. I think this is a restrained and reasonable approach. And most importantly, what we are proposing does not, in my opinion, change the character of the house. I certainly hope that the commission agrees with me. And with that, providing that Ms. Bowker doesn't have anything more to add, I would like to hand it back to the commission.
Okay.
And I don't have anything more to add, so commission, please take it away.
Okay, thanks. So, and I should have mentioned, so Andy, we can mute everybody except the panelists at this point. So the first decision the commission has to make is whether this residence, house, structure, whatever you want to call it, is historically significant and preferably preserved. Does anyone on the commission have either a question or a comment to that effect? Hearing nothing. Okay, no comments. Yep. Christopher, yeah, go ahead.
the criteria. I think it meets the criteria of being historically significant.
Okay, would you like to make a motion, Mr. Fay?
I will make a motion that it is historically significant.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
That sounded like Ron.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Okay, let's go through. So Christopher, I assume you're a yes?
Yes.
Okay, and Ron Ziemba?
Yes.
Okay. Joe Morgan?
Yes, historically significant and preferably preserved, correct?
Yes, that is the motion.
Yes.
Thank you. Peter McNamee?
Yes.
Okay. Patricia
Yes.
Pecknick? Okay. And the chair is yes. Okay, so so I'm gonna make a note here that we vote unanimous lead that it is. Make a note here. And by the way, I should have mentioned earlier, you guys accidentally did adhere to some new rules we're trying to do. We want to limit the initial presentations to about 15 minutes. I mean, we're not going to, be brutally arbitrary about it, but just for the sake of time. And you guys came in at about 14, so that was that was perfect. So you've pretty much covered the demolition plan review, I believe, but I'll give the attorney, Libby Bowker, do you have any quick comment you want to make before I open it to public comment as part of the hearing on the demolition plan?
I don't believe I have anything to add. Attorney Mead, do you have anything that you believe needs to be mentioned?
Ms. Mead does have her hand up. Do you want to?
Yeah, I just, she moved in the list when I was trying to unmute her, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Okay. If you are a member of the public and would like to comment pro or con, now we do have, as Mrs. Bowker pointed out, we are in receipt of several letters from abutters, so we have those and they will be in the record. So if you sent in a signed letter, you don't need to comment again, and so that would be fine to skip that because, as I say, we already have your comments on that. Not seeing any. Mr. Coltijohn, I see a hand up. Andy, can we recognize Mr. Coltijohn? Okay, Tom, you have to unmute yourself locally.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you. You're a little low, but we can hear you.
Is that any better?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Tom Coltijohn, 64 Federal Street, co-president of the Newburyport Preservation Trust. I am glad that you have voted that this house is worthy of preservation. I think that the plan presented literally destroys the building. I would like to draw your attention to the last time that this commission voted to let somebody raise a roof. And we all know that that is 12 Harrison Street, and I'm sorry, but it's a tough example. I encourage you to impose the demolition delay. I hope that everybody understands on the commission that when they talk about adding the 20 inches, it sounds fairly simple. You just raise the roof 20 inches. But what you do is you remove the entire original roof structure. It's gone. So that's not preserved. And in the process, despite what Ms. Bowker said, they're not preserving the center chimney. The center chimney goes. And the center chimney is the heart and soul of a historic building. What they actually propose is to extend the chimney up, the roof upward, the 20 inches, and then put a fake chimney cap on top of the structure, as if it were a center chimney. It's no longer original. You haven't preserved anything, and it would be sad to see that go. So I would encourage you to impose the demolition delay. One other point I saw in the plans that just bothered me, and that is the plastic windowsills or PVC windowsills. But that's a minor detail. What concerns me is the heart and soul of this building. And if you allow them to raise this roof, you will have destroyed this building. The chimney will go with it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Calderon. And Ms. Mead, I see your hand up where I assume you're part of the representation for the applicant. So we will allow you and other representatives of the applicant to respond to these comments once we've completed the public comment period. Stephanie Niketish, you're seeking to speak?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, a little low, but we can hear you.
Stephanie Nikitich, 93 High Street. I share Tom Calder-John's concerns, and I do think that maybe that you should do a site review of this building and impose the delays to give you time to really look at it. In addition to that, I have some questions about other materials. So it was mentioned that it's now vinyl siding, and I'm wondering if the plan for the building includes new siding and what it would be. I noticed that there are, it looks like there are new windows. It's not clear to me what the specification for those windows are or for roofing materials. So I think the material, information about materials for a building like this is important and something that you might ask of the applicants. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And you can put your hand down. Thank you. I need to see any other hands. Oh, I see one. PHEFF74.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Well, you can. Can you identify yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Philip Heffernan,
Okay.
and I live at 2 Hancock Street, directly across the street. I just want to say that raising the roof, in our eyes, 20 inches to make it more livable is completely fine with us, and especially rehabbing the outside of the house where it definitely needs repairs.
Okay. Did you also happen to send a letter or not, Philip?
We did not send a letter.
Okay, that's fine. We have you. These are all recorded, so you're on the record as supporting it as an abutter. So appreciate that.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let's see if there's anyone else. Not really seeing any. Okay, and I'm sure that, I know I have some questions and the other commissioners may as well. So why don't we, who would like to, is there any response? If you want to take just a couple minutes to respond, either Ms. Bowker or Scott Brown for the, for some of those comments that were raised. I would especially like to hear your explanation of how you intend to raise the roof without considerable destruction of the walls. You heard the reference to 12 Harrison Street. I think most of us know what happened there. Now, I'm not suggesting that, that's necessarily a precedent that everyone will be like that, but it's certainly a concern. So if you can, address that, I think we'd all like to hear an
This is
explanation.
Scott Brown. I don't think that this project's anything like what, was proposed at 12 Harrison. And I think that, our proposal here, the drawing in front of us, anything below that 20 inches, we're intending to leave that front roof intact, put in some new rafters and extend it to the new ridge line. That's the plan. And in order to leave that front roof intact, we do need to keep the sidewalls intact as well. The center chimney is something we struggled with. We are open to discussing some other alternatives with that. We did talk about keeping it in place, but part of me thought that keeping it in place, which is below, ultimately would be below the new ridge line that we're proposing, would look a bit funny, and something would be lost. So because of that, we did propose sort of taking it down and putting it back, where it is now. Where it is now relative to the existing ridge line, so it looked appropriate. But if other commission members think that it ought to go back and be retained in its original location, we're happy to comply with that. I just thought that at the end of the day, that would look a bit odd, but that's just me.
Okay,
So
I'm sorry, just so I'm clear on something. It sounded like I heard you say that you would not disturb the two side walls, nor would you disturb the front part of the roof. You would somehow, I assume you would somehow sister in rafters to extend the roof line?
that's correct. Yep.
I see.
That was the plan. The plan is to leave the existing front eave intact.
Right.
And, if this project wasn't on my desk, I could imagine myself being here tonight, sitting back and, watching somebody else before you that had, a proposal that took the entire second floor off. And, we're just, again, I think what we're asking for is not unreasonable. It's just we're talking 20 inches. I think what we're doing is maintaining the character of the house. That's very important to me. And I really thought that, keeping, looking at this front elevation, this, again, we're keeping the existing window opens in the same location, the existing doors in the same location. The eave line remains the same. And again, I think in the end of the day, this is going to remain, even with the added 20 inches, remain as the smallest house on the street.
Now, sorry for all these questions, but I assume that you're also raising the ceiling height of the first floor?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so it sounds like the interior is going to have extensive work.
Correct.
So I'm anticipating that. Now, is there that chimney, is the masonry below it all intact with fireplace or fireplaces, etc.? Or is that already gone?
I believe it to be intact.
I see.
But I might also add that I think the chimney that's there now is not the original chimney. I do believe it's been rebuilt.
Excuse me, just for a moment for clarification, Mr. Bork has said that the chimney inside is gone. The fireplaces are gone.
And Mr. Bork is he your
the
engineer?
The owner and applicant.
Oh, I see. Thank you. I make a note here. Thank you. Okay, so, well, these one to wonder what's holding that existing chimney up, but I'll defer that. And any comment?
I think what he means by that they're there, but they've been long since covered up. Their use has been discontinued.
Okay. Now, there was some questions raised by commenters from the public about other materials, and it looked like there was some indication in your proposal that you would do some updating in the exterior. I'm sure, no doubt, that's why some of the abutters were happy to see that. Could you speak to that as far as what you plan to do as far as cladding and windows?
Yeah, we've provided some notes here to demonstrate to everybody that we're planning on a high quality project. The sidewalls are going to be clad with cedar bevel clapboard.
Mm-hmm.
And we're indicating an exposure, which a tight exposure, which would have been consistent with what this house had originally.
Right.
Architectural asphalt roof shingle. If we were to rebuild the chimney, we're planning to do that with, restoration brick, planning to have it flashed with lead step flashing up there. The windows, will be a high quality wood, probably aluminum clad double hung window. with simulated divided lights. I will note that, we're showing a 6/6 pattern, which I think is consistent with what the house would originally had. Currently, the house has sort of two windows are 2/1. They are replacement windows, albeit some of them are old replacements. The original house would not have had a 2/1 window pattern. We're planning to do a high quality entry door surround as shown in this drawing.
Mhm.
Something consistent with what would have been there originally. We're
Okay, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to keep rolling along. Just one more question, and I'll ask my commissioners if they have any. And my last one is, how do you, have you had any investigation or exploration to verify that the existing structural members, I assume we're talking a timber frame construction, post and beam, whatever, has there been exploration to verify that it will support the additional, the changes you want to make to both the roof line and the interior?
Well, we haven't opened up anything on the inside yet, so we've not explored that. But this wouldn't be the first project of this type that I've done, and I don't see any issues with working with the existing timber frame.
Okay, let me turn it over to my colleagues. Does anyone have a question?
Hi, sorry, this is
Yep.
Olympia Bowker. I just want to add one more thing, if you don't mind. As tempting as it may be to bring in previous projects' successes or failures into consideration when deciding this project, they are separate, and this project needs to be considered on its face and on its merits in the documents before you. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Yeah, that goes without, well, I was gonna say it goes without saying, but it's fine to mention that, Olympia. And I agree completely. However, I would also add that we can take away lessons that we have learned from previous projects that may or may not have similarities. So, to make sure that we don't, allow, well, some unintended consequence to happen. So, my colleagues, would anyone like to make a comment, ask a question? Any of the above? Okay, I see a couple of hands. Peter, I think I saw yours first. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, just not in any particular order, but when I looked at this, I for the most part liked what I saw. I appreciate the fact that the vinyl's going away and the clapboards are going on. I appreciate the clapboard spacing is appropriate to the period. I appreciate the windows being changed out to something more appropriate, and I particularly appreciate the front entry being reinstated, I guess is the way to say it, since it's not there right now. I understand the need for more head height in the back, and I'm fine with that. And the idea of raising the roof 20 inches doesn't bother me in order to accomplish the head height. What does bother me is the chimney. The idea of losing that original chimney, and even if it is a rebuilt chimney, it's still part of this building. For the sake of raising the roof, when of the three alternatives that Architect Brown showed us, one of them, I'm wondering why we're looking at this proposal rather than option C. I didn't hear his reasons for why that was passed over. That looks like a good alternative. It gives the head height in the back of the house. It preserves the chimney. It doesn't do anything to at least the front slope of the roof, and all of the rest of the improvements that are happening to the house are still there. So is there a reason that C was passed over in favor of demolishing the original chimney?
Yeah, it's a good question. In my opinion, if we can go back to that sheet, I can't remember, that sheet was page 20?
20.
A2.2. I did think that, yeah, it's the one in the upper, so this is the proposal that before you, but we're really talking option C in the upper left-hand corner. I thought it was beginning to get to something good, but I really thought that this changed the character of the house. And I thought that it made that roof and back just too flat.
Yeah, certain awkwardness to it. Okay. Does that
Well,
answer your question?
Yeah, if I can just continue my comment.
Sure, yeah.
I see that and I don't disagree with it, but by the same token, I think that's a small price to pay for maintaining the character of the building with its original fireplace. The idea of a fake chimney is only marginally acceptable when there are no other options, and I don't see this as not having other options. This looks like a perfectly viable solution here.
Okay. Anything else, Peter?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Fay, I believe you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Peter said. That's very similar to what I was going to say. But I think that and I would hate to have the whole project hung up around the chimney, but I agree with him, and I agree with what Tom said in that the chimney needs to be preserved. I am wary of the adjustment to the roof line based upon Tom's comment, however, and I want to go on the record as saying that we are allowed to consider this house on its own, but also in light of what we have gone through in the last probably 4 or 5, 6 meetings. And I really want to be clear about this, because I'll just speak for myself personally, but we have been repeatedly told as a commission by attorneys, various attorneys, what we can and cannot do. Now, if we're violating the law in some way, that's one thing. But if we're deliberating over whether or not there's a model that was used in the past, I personally don't want to be told what I can and cannot think. So I want to be clear about that, and people can take that for what, for how they want to take it. But I want to be clear in expressing that opinion. I don't want to get into a debate about it. I don't want to get into a presidential debate about it, or a vice presidential debate. Right? It's not a back and forth. This time is our time to deliberate, and sometimes it's that extra comment that might very well cause me to say, I don't know if I really want to, it just kind of poisons the well. So
okay.
I'm getting tired of it personally, but I would echo what Peter said. I could support the raising of the roof if we can figure out a way to preserve the chimney. I like the fact that the clappers are being replaced. I like the fact that it appears that sort of front portico overhang is being taken off, and that's my 2 cents.
Okay, and just to clarify one thing, someone correct me, maybe Andy Port can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe when one has an antique property, there's sort of, as far as current building codes, they're sort of grandfathered in, so they're not expected to meet the current codes. I understand that for safety reasons, convenience reasons, there are many reasons why you might want to update to current codes, but it's not a legal requirement. Is that right, Andy?
Yeah, I'll actually defer to the architect here. I don't deal with the building code per se.
Oh, okay.
So I don't want to speak to that.
Okay. Well, I guess he's deferring to you, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just asking if it's a legal requirement or more like, gee, it sure would be nice if we could stand up straight.
I don't see what we're trying to do here in terms of raising and grabbing more ceiling heights as an exercise that's about trying to sort of meet the building code. To me, it's what is reasonable and what is livable, and I think that what we have asked for in this proposal is, I think it's a minimum, because I understand that this is a really sort of cute house as is, and there's a point where you can go too far and really change the character of it.
And, you know, I think we've been very careful to stop just short of that and get something that is workable and livable. You know, so I don't see this as, you know, sort of, it's not an exercise, again, you know, of trying to sort of satisfy the building code in my mind, because I do understand that there are some exemptions in there that allow you to do some different things or keep things the way they are.
Okay, Ron Ziemba, I see your hand is up, and Peter, yours is still up. Is that just left up from before, or did you want
I have a follow-up question when
Okay.
Ron is done.
Okay, let's go to Ron first.
Yes, just a question. Well, before I get to that, a commentary that in Newburyport, we run into this problem from time to time, raising roofs, and the reason given is usually a pretty good reason. If you get a room upstairs that's 6 feet 6 inches, that has a ceiling height of 6 feet 6 inches, you know, that's really unacceptable. And so I can understand why architects and owners might want to fix that. Now, my question is, and I would address this to Tom and anyone else who would like to comment on it, if there is a comment to be made, what do you suggest to owners and architects as a way to, if you can't operate, if you can't do it this way, how can you manage to fix this problem from a practical point of view, I'm saying? And then the question I have is on the chimney, and I wonder if anyone knows how old this chimney is. Is this a chimney that was replaced in 1860s or the 1950s? You know, that might have some bearing on the decision to be made here. But in any case, it's an unused chimney, so it's strictly an academic question, isn't it? That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Ron. I wouldn't say it's strict academic, only because the chimney is such an important characteristic of any old property like this. I just noticed some very interesting vents running up the side of that, but I didn't see them on your plans. Now, Peter, yeah, you wanted to make an additional comment?
Yeah, although I will add to what you were just saying, Glenn. I don't see this as academic at all. It's part of the character of the building.
Well, Peter,
the chimney, that is.
Excuse me, Peter. It's academic if the chimney was added in the 1970s, let's say, wouldn't you say?
No, not necessarily. I wouldn't say. I would say that it is part of the character of the building, and it's pretty strong. It's a pretty strong feature. So I won't disagree with you, Ron, that it's not on the table for discussion, but I think it's anything but academic. It's material.
Okay.
So
I get that.
The question that I wanted to ask of Scott Brown is, I'm flipping back and forth. I've got the plans up on another screen here. I'm flipping back and forth, and I'm trying to make sense of the fenestration on at least what is that elevation? That's the west elevation. We're on A2.2. The fenestration, it changes significantly from the original, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. You know, and it's because with all of these, we are changing, like particularly this one. I am trying to right now, I think, let's see here, let me go back and look at the existing elevations here. So right now, there are basically 2 windows that are centered up on the ridge. And with this, which is the proposal before you this evening, we're creating another set of windows and making them symmetrical about the new ridge line.
Okay, I was having trouble jumping back and forth between drawings, and I just wanted to make sure I was reading that right.
For a minute,
I don't have a problem with that, actually. I just wanted to clarify for my own thinking.
Yeah, no, definitely. The only we are changing window openings on the back, the left side and the right side of the house, but not the front of the house. Everything in the front of the house is remaining exactly where it is now. So if we could just go back and like talk about the chimney again, look at that front photo of the front of the house. There we go. So there's no doubt that this chimney is in really good shape from what I'm seeing in this photo. It looks like it's been, redone recently. So that tells me that, it's not the original chimney to the house. But like I said before, I did say that this is something that we struggled with. And, if the commission thinks that it ought to be left right there, right where it is now, we're certainly happy to do that. But I would very much like to raise that ridge line up to 20 inches that we're proposing, because that left side elevation, I think, is very important to this house. And I do think that option C does change the character of the house. If it was an elevation that wasn't so prominent, I might think differently about it. But when you turn up Hancock, it is an elevation that you see, because there isn't a house so close to it. So I think it's important to kind of retain that character. And I really think that, what we're doing, raising this 20 inches, does do that.
Okay, we need to move along here. Now I do see Joe Morgan. Did you want to make a comment? See a hand raised.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Chair. I pretty much agreed with Commissioner McNamee's comments. I do feel that the front exposure of the roof should be left as is, and even more so due to the fact that the ridgeline, the existing ridgeline, is the center of the fenestration on the sides, along with the chimney. I think all of that creates a composition that is actually the historical, meaning to this front portion of the building. I'm less concerned about the roof at the rear. If you need to raise the roof to get the additional headroom, I think that's perfectly reasonable. I assume that the framing is probably there's a ridge beam, and then you can tear off the rear roof and you could reframe all that without actually impacting the front portion of the building. And you would leave the existing chimney placement untouched, and you could work with the existing window locations on the side elevations. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Okay, any last comments? I think the only one we haven't really heard from is Patricia. Did you have anything you want to say before we move on to a potential motion?
Nope, I'm listening and learning.
Okay, all right. Well, at this point we need to make a motion or to have a motion to either accept this well, I'll call it a demolition plan. Technically, that's how they refer to it, or impose a demolition delay, during which time the applicant can make some tweaks and adjustments and come back with something that is more in keeping. My sense of the commission, it sounds to me like the commissioners are pretty much on the same page as not wanting to see the plan executed quite as it is, although it's close. I don't think we're terribly far away, but just needs a little bit of work. So if that is more or less close to the sense of you all commissioners, is there someone who would make such a motion?
I'll make a motion that we impose a demolition delay until we get further information, especially about the chimney.
And I'll second that.
Okay, that was Mr. Fay, and followed by a second by Mr. Morgan, right? Okay, so let's go through my roll call. Mr. Fay?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, Ron Ziemba?
Yes.
Okay, Peter McNamee?
Yes.
Okay. Patricia Pecknick?
Okay, yes.
Okay, and the chair is yes. Okay. So we'll notify the office that we'll impose the demolition delay, but I would expect that given where you are with this, Mr. Brown, and the owners and so forth, I don't think we're so terribly far away from agreement that we can't resolve this sometime in the fairly near future. So I don't think you'll need to wait a whole year to resolve this.
I agree, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving along. These things always seem to take longer than we want, don't they? The next item on our agenda under general business, this is not a public hearing related thing, but it's a discussion among our panel here. By the way, Joe, your hand is still up. Was that just an accident?
It is an accident.
Okay, very good. So I'll give you a little bit of background, and maybe first ask is Ms. Mead, are you representing the? I assume you are the applicant on this one.
Yes, I
You are.
am.
Okay, all right. I'll just give a very brief introduction then, and then I'll give you a few minutes to make any comments you'd like to make, and then we'll move on to our deliberations, which I don't think will be terribly complicated. I hope my fellow commissioners have had a chance to look at the draft preservation restriction. Just as a part of review, you might recall this was a fairly large lot on Merrimack Street and another Merrimack Court, or one of those side streets that goes down. They are wanting a Section 6C permit to build another residence on the property so they can revert to main residence, single family, but still have the two-family use. Thank you, Andy, for changing that. So as part of the deal, so to speak, with the planning board from whom they need the special permit, they need to have a preservation restriction in place. And my understanding is that they can get as far as a building permit with a draft PR that's been approved by this commission, but they will not be able to get an actual occupancy permit until that the preservation restriction is completed and approved by both the city and the state and filed with the registry. So having said that, would you like to add anything to that, Ms. Mead?
I would, Mr. Chair, just a couple of things. So just to clarify, so that the commission is not concerned about construction on the house, the existing historic house. We can apply for a building permit for the new proposed house in the rear and not get a occupancy permit for that until this is filed. We can't pull a building permit for the original structure until the preservation restriction is recorded, approved and recorded by all the parties. So I think that's really important.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure. So the process is, many of you may know, is we've taken the Mass Historic form, and what Mr. Steinitz likes to see is a red line of that form. And we have added, obviously, the description of the property from the Form B, all of the identifying photographs, the approved plans, the additional restrictions by the Historic Commission as approved by the Planning Board, and the Form B and all the various attachments that are supposed to go with the historic preservation restriction. As we've sat here tonight, I've actually caught a couple of typos that are not significant that I will change. But the substance of this document is in compliance with the Mass Historic form, as well as the decision of this commission and the planning board. And our goal is to, after you approve this in draft, not final, but in draft, I will send it off to Mr. Steinitz. The Mass Historic will review it for a while. He will send back comments, I am sure. Once we have resolved all the comments with him, we will then come back to this commission for its final approval and signature. It will then go to the planning board for its final approval. It will then go to the city council for their authorization for the mayor to sign it, and the mayor will then sign it. And then it will go back to the Mass Historic Commission for its signature, and then it will be recorded.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Mead. And I should point out to my fellow commissioners, you might recall the discussion we had on this was back in June 25th to be precise. And there was a lot of discussion. There's even a site visit that some of us went on. And we were very specific, and the planning board actually expressed appreciation to the commission for the specificity that we gave them for the so-called conditions. And they are incorporated by reference within the preservation restriction. And I'll just as a reminder, they are to have all the exterior historical features that reflect that Greek revival renovation that was carried out about 1842, restored through repair or replacement in kind. No doors or window openings, except as noted in the plans, are to be altered. They were given approval to remove that front portico, and the front elevation was going to be restored according to the plans presented, which were that just a regular center window up on the second floor, very similar to what you see with the other sort of twin house just around the corner. So you have the traditional 5-bay front. And very importantly, all the existing historic windows, that is the ones dating to sometime from 1840 to 1950, will be repaired and or restored. And newer windows identified as Brosco replacements or similar, they will be replaced by new historically appropriate replacement windows with wood sash and muntins and true divided lights. Thank you, Mr. Morgan, for insisting on that. The historic door and window, you might remember on the sort of the eastern side or elevation, that is going to be kept and just cleaned up or restored as needed, along with the window just to its right. The front door and window lights will be preserved. And the wording on the front door is that the door may be replaced with an historically appropriate door pending review and approval of the commission of the specific design and reason for replacement. And that entablature around the door will be restored to an historically appropriate design, probably very similar to what's there now, except for where it might have been damaged by that portico. And finally, the chimney will not be altered or removed. I don't even know if it needs repairs. I think it's pretty much in okay shape already, and they don't plan to do anything to it. Ms. Mead, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, we took them exactly from your decision, exactly from the planning board decision. So that's exactly what they
Right.
said. And they are part of, they're actually specifically stated in the exhibit with the approved plans, and then made reference to within the document itself.
Right, correct. Okay, I see a hand up. Ms. Pecknick, you're recognized.
I just have a couple questions. So on page 4, number 3, under grantors covenants, there's a reference to the expenditure of community preservation funds, and I assume it's just an error because it was written from a prior PR, but that would have to be struck.
So it is struck. You can see it says deleted.
Underneath it though, you mean this whole thing on the left where it says this whole, the building.
Oh,
Okay.
yes,
I thought
see
I
it.
saw it twice in there somewhere. In the
Ms. Mead, if you go down about 4 or 5 lines, you'll see that unless that deletion covers that as well.
Yep, I see that. Thank you.
So I was just assuming you meant to strike it and didn't, but I wanted to point it out. And then my other question is on pages 37 to 38 under Exhibit E, the grantors approved plans, NHC conditions for a special permit. So on pages 37 and 38, under conditions of the Newburyport Historical Commission, it states that all historic windows must be repaired and restored. There's no mention of window trim, and on the diagram, it doesn't talk about window trim. I understand that it says all exterior historical features reflecting the Greek revival renovation will retain. And it lists those features by name and depicts them on the proposed exterior elevations on page 37. But again, there's no mention of the window trim as being retained. And then my other question is, I understand the purpose of the baseline documentation is to identify all of the architectural features, including windows and trim, that are to be restored. So I'm wondering why on the west facade on pages 24, 25, 26, it mentions windows and trims, but it doesn't on the east facade on pages 27 or 28, or on the north and south facades. So my question is about the window trim.
So again, we took the exact plans that this commission approved and the planning board approved. We took the exact conditions that this commission approved and the planning board approved, and we repeated them exactly in the decision. Then the photographs are representation of what's there. So page 26, I say windows, trim, siding, and rake detail. I was just pointing out the detail. I could say nothing. I could just say west facade to explain that it's the west facade as is. These are existing condition photographs. They aren't representative of what is happening or what's not happening. They are required to be existing condition photographs and to have some identifier on them.
Okay, and Andy, could you go back to the beginning of that E part to see, so we can see what the actual verbiage is about, you know, preservation of the trim and self cloth, because it may be that it's inclusive enough to cover that window trim. I suspect it may be. Window openings. Yeah.
We don't propose to change the window trim.
Yep.
It's never been proposed to be changed.
Yeah, I'm not too worried. Yeah, and I think that first bullet, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ms. Mead. That first bullet, I think, says it. All the exterior historical features reflecting a Greek revival renovation carried out in 1842 shall be restored through repair or replacement in kind. No doors or window openings, except as noted below, and there are a few exceptions, not many, are to be, so no doors or windows openings are to be altered. I think, Patricia, you know, I appreciate you calling that out, but I think we're okay. Hello?
Yeah, oh yeah. No, I just wondered, because I was looking at the minutes, including the door and window trim, and I was looking at the diagrams, and I was just looking for the term window trim since every other feature was named. So I just want to make sure.
All right, and I thought I had something. Andy, could you please go to page 5 of this draft? I had something I noted. I don't think it was anything major. But I have a note here on something on page 5.
I do have a typo on page 5, Mr. Chair. There's a reference to 4.1 in the second paragraph down, and it should be paragraph 4. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, mine actually was on number 6, IV. This phrase "without further approval" is really redundant because the whole section 6 is all about what you can do without further approval. So it's not a big deal, you know, but it's just redundant. You could start that IV with RN conformance, blah blah blah. But I'm okay with it either way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this PR from my esteemed colleagues? And Patricia, your hand is still up. Did you want to say anything more, or is that just, it's a vestigial organ? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Would someone, the chair would love to hear a motion to approve this draft so that it can proceed to further review. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, does it go from here to Mass Historical Commission, Ms. Mead?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so the motion we need is that the Newburyport Historic Commission approves that this draft be sent on to the Mass Historic Commission as currently modified and displayed in this meeting for their review and approval. Someone can probably just say "so moved."
So moved.
Thank you, Ron. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I think that was Peter.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Ron, your vote?
Yes.
Okay, Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, Peter?
Yes.
1 second. Okay, Patricia?
Yes.
So I got Ron, Joe, the chair. Who did I leave out? I feel like I'm leaving some. There's me. I'll vote yes.
Chris.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Chris. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And Christopher Fay. Good. Okay, so you can move on to the next step with that. Attorney Mead.
Thank you.
Okay. It's 8:10 p.m. and we've got 38 attendees. I have a feeling that they're here to because they're interested in the next item on the agenda, 93 State Street. By way of introduction, I won't give the whole history of this because it's long and we don't need to review it all. Just that we started looking at this way back in either January or February and issued an initial historical report. We saw it again in June 25th and issued a second historical report or advisory review. I don't even know what the correct term is anymore, but it's a report for the planning board whose job it is to issue or not issue a special permit for the project. Just so that everyone is clear and on the same page, this is the expansion or new addition to 93 State Street, which is the Institution for Savings Bank. It is an addition that would be built on to the what I'll just call the 1980s addition. So it's to the rear of the property. We know that there's been a lot of objection from butters. We can talk about that more later, perhaps. I hope to have time for some public comment, but I should point out first and foremost that the deal is that the planning board is the one that is considering all aspects of this, including abutters' comments, sight lines, what it does to my view, what it does to my ventilation, what it does to the noise, what it does to the traffic, any and all concerns you might have. The Historical Commission's purview is to determine whether or not this new construction meets the requirements set out in the ordinance and by reference the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines on new construction in historic districts. Now, I'll also point out, because it's I reviewed some of the notes from prior hearings, and I just want to make one thing clear that so that everyone knows, both on the commission, the public, and the applicant, that I fully understand that property, the lot that the institution owns, bounded by State Street, Prospect, Otis Place, and Garden Street, well, not Garden Street, but the properties that are on Garden Street, I should say, is zoned commercially. And as such, there are certain things that are normally permitted as part of commercial zoning, which have to do with roof heights and size and setbacks and all of that. However, there is something called a downtown overlay district, which was enacted a few years back to try to impose a case of arrested development, one might say, in that the idea was to have projects that are within the downtown overlay district, which is not very big, but it's the heart of downtown, be reviewed by the Historical Commission, and the Historical Commission does not have approval or disapproval authority. They simply provide an opinion to the planning board, which is the permit granting authority in this case. So my point is that while I fully appreciate that we are talking about a lot that's zoned commercially, we also, the setting which we are required to look at includes properties across the street and so on, and abutters and so on, which are not zoned commercially. So that's one point. And the other point is that the way the ordinance is written, the whole reason you're here, you meaning in this case the applicant, the whole reason you are here is because the planning board has to issue a special permit and they need a report from this commission. So I just don't want to have to revisit that particular ground again. So the applicant has submitted some further revised plans. A little while back, there was sort of a brief review of kind of a look-see of some thoughts that were, how should I put it, preliminary thoughts on what they wanted to do. And in the meantime, they have been refined. So who is representing the bank? Is it Ms. Mead? Are you speaking?
Chairman Richards? Chairman Richards,
yes.
Before we move forward, can I just say, as with the last time this came before us, because I'm a neighbor and an interested party, I'm going to recuse myself for the duration of this agenda item.
Thank you. That was Peter McNamee, for those who don't recognize the voice. Thank you, Peter. I should have mentioned that, but thank you for not forgetting. So Peter, yeah, Peter is either in a butter or a near a butter neighbor, so he has recused himself from this particular matter. So now my question goes back to the applicant. Who will be representing the applicant?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
Mead, Tellerman, Costa, 30 Green Street, on behalf of the Institution for Savings. With me this evening is Christopher Angelakis, who is an architect, and Shreya Shah, both of the architects from ARC Architecture out of Boston. I'm also with Mike Jones, the CEO, and Kim Rock, the COO of the Institution for Savings. May I proceed, and are we ready to go?
Just about. Is everyone going to speak, or what do you anticipate, Ms. Mead, as far as who is going to present? Is it just you and the architects, or what?
At this point, it's myself and Mr. Angelakis.
Okay. Yes, please proceed. And I think Andy has your presentation, right, Andy?
Thank you. Andy, if you could go up to the slide 3 of the site plan, please. So I'm going to be brief because I think that the most amount of time should be spent by the architect on the changes to the plan. As this commission has seen, because almost all of you, if not all of you, attended the meeting that we had at the planning board a little over a month ago to review the new plan. This new design is requested by the commission and the planning board, reflects the neighborhood setting of Prospect Street, Otis Place, rather than the commercial setting of State Street. The buildings are broadly wood clad and include pitched roofs and gable ends reflective of the residential end of the property. Generally, following the review of the planning board meeting a month or so ago, the applicant has reduced the eave line that runs along Prospect Street as requested, included details in the finishes, revised the section of the building on the corner of Prospect and Otis to include design elements of the remainder of the building, added several doorways reflective of the residential doors, and included several items, including a chimney on the exterior to a working fireplace inside. Christopher will go over in great detail a number of the improvements, including mainly one, egress out of the garage into the parking lot and not into the residential neighborhood. Given the distance from the 1871 structure to the proposed addition, coupled with the new design, the proposal does not distract from the original structure, and in our opinion is appropriate for the setting. As you will see following the review of the plans with Christopher, the Institution for Savings has met the criteria of section 27F5C of the DoD for new construction, in that the proposed addition remains compatible with the historic character and scale of the subject historic building, structure, and architectural features, its lot, and its setting within the DoD, as the case may be. And at this point, so as not to waste any other time, I'd like Christopher to start to walk through the plans from here.
Thank you, Lisa, and good evening, Mr. Chair. Good evening to the commissioners. I'm going to go pretty quickly. I think we'll go right to the
please.
Forward, please. And I'm going to try to go quickly through the plans. I think most people here are pretty familiar with the previous scheme. I'm going to point out significant changes very quickly, because I think talking about the character and the massing and scale of this building is much more important than looking at the planning here. But a couple of key features to start to talk about on the ground floor. We're still seeing the parking. It's a slightly different layout. We were able to make a much more efficient layout, which gave us some opportunities that really changed the character of how this building sits on the street. One of the things that is a very significant difference is how the building responds to Prospect Street. It now has a front door directly on Prospect Street. It has occupied space behind all the windows on Prospect Street. Even turning onto Otis Street, all the windows there are also looking into occupied space. So no windows look into visually the parking garage at all. And as you roll around this building, you will notice that there is no longer two curb cuts, one on on Prospect Street, there's only one that's existing that goes around the turnaround, and there's only one entry into the garage. So we are eliminating a garage door that exits onto Prospect Street from the previous submission. Again, maintaining the character of the neighborhood by not introducing that element. Another key feature to look at here on this first floor is if you look to the Garden Street side behind the core, the elevator and stair core, you'll see an enclosed generator room. And this generator is now been enclosed inside the building.
You can see what they're looking at.
Is now enclosed inside the building. There is no louvers. We are venting this generator. It is going to be acoustically enclosed completely by the building, and all of its air intake and exhaust will happen up through the roof. There are no adjacent louvers to this room. It's going to be a completely sound locked room. If we go up to the second floor very quickly. Thank you. You'll see a very significant change in the footprint here. And the footprint of the second floor will make a lot more sense when we move on to the next couple slides. I guess the only thing to point out here is the how at the kind of plan northeast of the building, there is a working fireplace. That you will see that express itself as a chimney. Yes, thank you. Will express itself as a chimney on the exterior. And if we go directly to 7, you can go directly to 7. So this is an initial image before we show you elevations. We thought it was really important to show the significant change in massing in the amount of kind of architectural manipulation of the massing and scale of the building to really work on breaking down this project into from any place on the street that you could stand, it's going to look like 2 or 3 or even 4 individual masses, matching the kind of scale of adjacent homes. And, to the point that we were really looking at the size of each one of these gable masses being equivalent or slightly even smaller than the adjacent homes. So I will point out here, as before we go to the elevations, that the exterior materials, you can see where we connect to the 1980s building. If you see the rounded window, that's an existing window for the 1980s building, and directly adjacent is where the building's attached. That's where all of the stair and elevators that mitigate between the offset floor levels of the 80s building to the new addition are being handled. That would be brick to match the 1980s building, but then quickly, as this building starts to work around, it breaks down into painted wood clapboards, painted wood siding and trim, architectural asphalt shingles. The guttering would be done, would be hidden guttering that in all of the gutters would daylight to the flat roof and be internally drained, so there'll be no downspouts. The windows would be aluminum clad on the outside and likely wood windows that are aluminum clad. And doors, the majority of the doors here will also be painted wood doors. Let's move on to the elevations. And the line drawings here really start to show the distance from the 1871 building. This is both the Garden Street side and the Prospect Street side. We will zoom in on the kind of dotted rectangular sections in a bit. We have zoomed in, Andy, we have zoomed in elevations further on so that your resolution is good online. But this drawing in particular shows a number of data points. One is the distance from the 1871 building. It also marks out specific eave heights that are pertinent to this. If you can go to 9, this is where we get into a little bit more detail. So here we're now looking at the upper one is the Garden Street elevation. I think that was of particular interest to the commission today. And you can see that there's, it's broken down into 2 masses. On the left side, this is the connector to the 80s building, brick, lower. with a lower edge. Yep, thank you. And on the right, it's gable roofed clapboard mass to the right. All of the windows on the lower floor on this side would be spandrel glass because they look into the garage, but all the other windows in the upper area would be vision glass. On the Prospect Street side elevation, what you're seeing is, these are a little bit difficult to see because there's a number of angles involved, and we will show three-dimensional views of all of this, but you're really starting to see the breakdown of this into multiple masses that are of the scale of the house. And we put dimension strings here showing the window sizes. So that can be part of the record. And we've also noted here all of the materials. I've already gone through the majority of the materials. The chimney will be brick. We have a brownstone chimney cap. I think of the only two materials that I didn't mention on the perspective. And drawing number 10 will show some of the more minor, these are sort of the minor, more hidden elevations. Otis Street elevation is particularly interesting, again, highlighting how this is being designed to feel like 3 or 4 masses instead of 1 mass. And there's, other than that feature, the materials are similar and the same on that. I would also point out the upper left elevation. The only element there that I wanted to point out, and if you can pan up to the upper left, yeah, is the only place that the garage opens is on this elevation. In the garage door sitting sort of in the middle elevation, our architectural intent is to match texture and color of the clapboard siding as much as possible. Our intent is that when this door is closed, your eye washes over it and you're not seeing the door. I think at this point, I don't know if Andy were able to do this, but giving control of the screen to Shreya Shah, who is also with ARC, we were going to walk through the three-dimensional model.
Actually, I think we had discussed this with Attorney Mead prior to the meeting. So we have a slide sequence here. As I understand it, you have 3 dimensionals below. Is that correct?
Those are just the still images, but we can start there. And what we brought to this meeting, so the commissioners know, is we also have available the model that all these model shots are taken from. So if anyone on the commission wishes to see something from another view, from any angle, we were hoping to be able to show that model in real time. But for the sake of time, I think it'd be okay to start with 14. And this is a sequence of images. I'm not gonna do a whole lot of narrative about them, but starting with slide 14, I'm not sure if we can click to that slide. Thank you. This whole series of images that are shown here starts sort of as a walk from State Street, looking at the 1871 building on your right, the clock tower on your left, and in the background, straight center image is how the addition is now expressing itself. It expresses itself as a gable end. 15. Thank you. Again, looking at the corner here of State and Prospect, and you're starting to see the gable end once again. And we're just going to take a walk down 16. And we're just going to get a little closer here, and other architectural elements start to emerge. And I think the thing we tried very hard to do here is to really look at eave lines, roof edges, roof pitches, and make sure that this property feels like a cluster of buildings, not unlike how the neighborhood buildings are clustered together. This is an exercise in scale, breaking down architectural elements to feel like adjacent architectural elements. 18. And one of those elements really is a marker of entry. It's something I think may have been lacking in the previous submission, but the entry now has a human scale marker. And again, you're starting to see the masses feel like multiple things. So the next slide whips us around to Otis Place, looking back towards the property, and you're seeing to the far right of the image, you're starting to see the gable end of the Otis Place facade. You can step forward, thank you. Again, a little bit closer view of that, and step forward one more time. In the Otis Place Prospect Street corner is one where we tried to take particular care and to start stepping down the scale so that this actual one-story element starts to really become a scalar element. There are a lot of different scales of houses that are in this neighborhood, and this kind of manipulation, pulling back the upper floor massing, is really an attempt to be sensitive to all the different scales of the buildings in this neighborhood, especially at this corner. And I think on this image, while we're looking at this image, I think it's fair to say that previous designs of this building really looked at relating to the kind of appropriate commercial architecture, whereas this submission really flips that to say, what does this project look like when, as we're relating more directly to the neighborhood? And so we're really looking at this building being of the neighborhood, not of State Street. The next image, please. Next image really speaks to what is seen of the building from Garden Street. So one of the things we tried very hard to do architecturally is to make sure that wherever you see this building, that you are often seeing two masses, not just one. So for instance, this view corridor through the buildings at Garden Street, you're seeing the brick mass and one of the gable end masses at the same time. This is something we're trying to be very sensitive to make sure that we're not seeing one big thing. There's always a breakdown of scale, always a breakdown of size of the elements of the architecture. The next two images are overall aerials so that you can see how many breakdowns of mass are being done. There are four major kind of masses and one center mass, and then one story mass on Otis Place that really brings that scale down towards the neighborhood. And then we want to flip that aerial around just to be transparent about how this all works, even along the fence line at the Garden Street properties. And those are our images that we have to show. Again, if the commissioners wish to see any part of this model, we were hoping to be able to have that live for you. But if these still suffice for the discussion, so be that.
Okay, was that Mr. Tibbetts speaking?
No, that was Christopher, the architect.
Oh, okay. Angelakis, right, got it. Just two real quick questions. In the renderings, the windows are all 1/1. Is that simply a lack of detail, or is that the intention?
No, that's the intention. As
okay.
commercial windows looking in, right. In the commercial office.
Okay.
And also,
has colors.
There are a number of precedents in the neighborhood of 1/1s that we thought would be appropriate.
Yep. I get it. And have colors been decided? 'Cause it seemed like the colors shifted around in some of the renderings. Some of them look darker than others, but is that to be determined?
Well, the colors are not shifting around. They're all from the same model. I think what you're seeing is different lighting conditions from different sides of the building. The colors have not been determined, but our intended color pattern is that the field of the clapboards would be something neutral, and then the trim would be white.
Okay.
That's our initial. Oh, and another material I didn't mention is there would be a granite base running around the entire base of the building.
Is that gray?
It is.
Solid gray you see at the bottom? Okay.
It is.
And you said one door, you mentioned a door on Prospect Street, but it looks like there are two, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. There are numerous, well, there are two doors on Prospect Street, one directly into the one-story mass.
Right.
And one that's kind of mid
Right.
hallway, and then one that would be considered sort of the main entrance. That is 90 degrees from Prospect Street.
Right. Yeah, we see all three of those on this particular view.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Christopher. Well, let's see how well we can do with this. I feel I'll probably be lynched if I show my face around town without having allowing public comment. So I'll try to do that, but I beg of you, since it's already 8:35, to please be brief and just again, once you're recognized and you're unmuted, unmute yourself locally. We'll try to take as many folks as we can. And, can please stick to the kind of things that the Historical Commission purview includes. So without further ado, I'm seeing a few, but two of them, Tibbetts and Nutter, I believe, are with the applicant. So I'm going to jump down to Mr. Mackin, Peter Mackin. You need to unmute yourself, Mr. Mackin, if you want to say something.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you now, yes.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, I just want to say, to me, it diminishes the charm and character of the area still, and it's not really in harmony with the neighborhood because of its size and scale. The new addition is larger than the historic original building, and I'm really concerned that the height and the footprint is now just, and still is way too big for the space. I'm concerned that they pushed the walls of the building right up to the sidewalk. The sidewalk's only 6 foot wide on that side of the street. It's 9 foot wide on my side of the street. I'm on 13 Prospect. To me, I asked the question, why is it so high? Is it not possible to put the entire garage further down under the street level? Right now, it's only 8 feet deep. So those are really my questions with regard to the height, size, and scale and mass of this huge structure.
Okay, thank you. All right, get over here. I'm trying to keep up with you folks. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, you can put your hand down, please, Mr. Mackin. I see Snaseer S. Nasir. You'll need to unmute yourself on your local device if you wish to speak.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, so after going through all the detailed discussions that we have had in last few meetings, I think Christopher has done a great job in presenting this. I think this is a great plan and it matches with the neighborhood. It maintains integrity of the whole area. I think I don't see anything that it makes it look very massive. We have shown you, the architect has shown you all the pictures from the different views. And I think they have done a great job and I think it fits very well with the neighborhood.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Nasir. Are you in, I don't think you gave your address. Are you?
Sorry. I'm a practicing physician in Newburyport and I also have one of the historic buildings which I practice out of is 28 Green Street.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I'm very sensitive to the whole idea of historic commission.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, we've got a Claire Papanastasio. Again, you need to, okay, I think you're good to go, Claire.
Hi, Chairman Richards. This is actually Mark Griffin and Claire Papanastasio are both here together.
Okay.
I'm going to speak first if that's all right with you.
Go ahead.
So we're direct abutters at 4 Otis Place, and we're probably the closest property to the proposed new addition. We're, I guess, around 6 feet from the building wall of the new addition. And fundamentally, we're objecting to the size and the scale, obviously. And since this is a DOD advisory review, we expect that, whatever construction is done will pay respect to the associated historic neighborhood around it as well. And we think that this doesn't. And first and foremost, the reason we think that is, or at least I think that, I won't speak for Claire, but the reason I think that is, the addition is first and foremost larger than the original structure, even with the 1980s addition attached to it. It's larger than that. And I think the Historical Commission needs to determine if that's really what they want to see in the downtown overlay district, that additions will overwhelm the original historic structure, which is what I think this one does. And yes, it's been changed since the original brick proposal, but just because you came in with a bad proposal to start with doesn't mean that making a less bad proposal makes it palatable. So that's really what I have to say on the subject. Thank you.
Okay.
Claire would like to speak now, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, please.
No, thank you. Thank you. I second what Mark said. And also too, I think you're going to find I don't want to speak for my fellow neighbors, but I think we've been pretty consistent about what the issue is. And that is size. And that falls under your jurisdiction. And while they've changed it, they've come back with very, very superficial changes aesthetically. And I wonder what the long-term game is of the bank. I'm just curious about it because they're so reticent to listen to the neighborhood, the city. 4 times city officials have asked them to collaborate with us, yet we haven't heard anything. So there are several things at play here, but one consistent thing is size. And that's the thing that we're asking them to address. We're open to suggestions. And thank you for listening to us.
One last thing also, Mr. Chairman Richards. I think that what probably would be prudent for those that are affiliated with the bank to identify themselves as being affiliated, such as Dr. Nasir, who is a trustee of the bank. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Okay, moving along. Now I see hands up from Dave Tibbetts and Charles Nutter, but I believe I recognize those names as people. I think I definitely recognize Mr. Nutter as at least a former someone who's working as an architect with the bank. Did you guys have something a comment that you want to make as a member of the public, or what? Mr. Nutter, you've been unmuted, but you'd need to unmute yourself locally if you wanted to speak. And if not, we will move on then. And Ms. Nasir, your hand is still up, so you might want to move that down, remove that. Ms. Cindy Johnson, I see your hand. Thank you. And again, unmute yourself locally. There you go.
Yep.
Go ahead. We hear you.
Thank you, Glenn. Yes, Cindy Johnson, 99 Lime Street, longtime resident of the South End. I live in an 18th century home. I'm very aware of the challenges involved in producing livable areas that nod to the historic nature of Newburyport. And in my estimation, this revised design is world-class design, does not take away from the 1870s building by trying to imitate it, doesn't try to pretend to be an old building, but rather uses the contemporary design to suggest and to blend in with the scale of the neighborhood. People keep talking about this being large, but the reality is the buildings to the casual observer will look just like the crowded South End. And if the abutters would like a case study in what it's like to live in the South End, they could come to my neighborhood, where buildings 2 stories higher than mine sit on either side of my property. The reality is we live in a crowded town and we have to coexist. And I applaud the bank for taking a measure that not only nods to the neighborhood, complements the neighborhood. And I urge the commission to give a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Are you on the board or anything for the bank?
I am a trustee of the bank. Yes,
Okay.
I am.
Okay, I suspected that. Not because of what you said, but because I think I've seen your name in the back. Okay, and you can put your hand down. Ms. Colleen Turner, your hand is up. Did you want to make a comment? And I appreciate that people are being brief. I really appreciate that a lot. So let's see if we can keep that going.
Hi, can you hear
Colleen,
me?
yep. Yeah, we can.
First of all, Colleen Turner Cicino, 15 Otis Place, Newburyport. Thank you, Chairman Richards, for calling out Ms. Nasir and Ms. Johnson on not mentioning that they are corporators of the bank, because I am neither a trustee nor a corporator. I'm being quite clear. I found actually the first attorney, Balcor, I believe her name, and the architect's attention to detail and consideration for the Hancock Street project, their willingness to engage with neighbors and to try to achieve their goals and maintain his historical significance was spot on. Yet, I only wish the Institution for Savings proposal for this approximate 16,000 square foot expansion would be as modest and respectful. What is lacking? Reasonable setbacks, building as far to the sidewalk as allowed, or extending the height for God knows what. It's a permanent desecration of a historic neighborhood. So what they're really asking you guys to approve is a massive structure that is not about advancing the viability of a business. We know in this pandemic that you can work effectively back a house. They want you to approve an enormous structure that continues to be insensitive to the existing neighborhood. The iteration and all previous versions, their questionable manipulation of renderings, they distort the mass, the size, and the scale. The footprint is still enormous. If you look at their very own ARC slides, 23 and 24, I find them offensive. I respectfully request that the commission strongly advise the planning board and write their report against this plan as presented, and insist, please, that the institution engage in reasonable and much needed discussions with representing neighbors and abutters to achieve a productive and reasonable expansion that lets the bank grow, but does not destroy a well-loved and historic entry into Newburyport's stunning South End. Thanks so much.
Before you go, Ms. Turner, what was the project you mentioned? It sounded like you were mentioning a project on Hancock Street as being a good example. What was
No,
that?
actually, I thought they handled that in a great way. They actually said they spoke to neighbors. They actually said that they took into consideration the neighborhood and the existing stuff. I don't feel they're doing that. They're shoving this down our throats.
Oh, I see. So the applicant handled it in a better way. I see.
And I wish they'd give us that respect.
Okay. And by the way, I wasn't trying to call anyone out just so much as just being, transparent.
I've been on since the beginning, and I found that whole dialogue completely different than what ours has been.
Okay.
But thank you, sir.
Yep, you're welcome. So
I'll
next,
lower my
and you
hand
can.
and unmute.
Yep, thank you. And yeah, I see you put your hand down. Thank you. Mr. Coulter John, actually, yeah, all right, well, you're already, if you want to just unmute yourself so you can speak.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Tom Coulter John, 64 Federal Street, co-president of the Newburyport Preservation Trust. I would like to point out that the peak of these, although separate looking buildings, is 37 feet high. A lot of the federal buildings, the big square federals that you see are only go up to 30 feet, and this is 7 feet higher than that. I believe that they still detract from the original structure. The buildings are still, despite the sort of trees or greenery that's in the way, it still shows that it is connected to a historic structure. And I think it does detract from the historic structure. I also would like to point out that on Otis Place, that the roof eave of the building is above Mark Griffin's house. I mean, it towers above it, and it certainly towers above his house. I think work needs to be done on this design. I think the point about talking to the neighbors and trying to work something out is critical. I honestly believe it's possible, and I don't see that happening, but I would love to see that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colton. And you may lower your hand. And I saw a Sean Sullivan. Okay, Sean, if you want to unmute yourself so you can speak. Mr. Sean Sullivan, Earth calling Sean Sullivan, unmute yourself. All right, if not, why don't we try Steve Charette? Okay, same.
I'm here. Hi, this is Steve Charette. I'm at 16 Prospect, right at the corner of Otis Place and Prospect Street. My house is shown in a number of the renderings. I agree with my neighbors, although I mean, the design, I think, has improved. My wife and I reviewed the renderings today. From our perspective, we're not really questioning the design so much. We think there's some eye relief on the corner, which we appreciate, especially from our vantage point. But the structure's too large. I mean, Mark Griffin said it well. It dwarfs. It's larger than the original structure. So it's too big. It creates a tunnel-like effect in our neighborhood. We have 11 windows that are going to look at this massive structure. It's too tall, too big. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Charette. Let's see. Did we get Mr. Sullivan? Looks.
Can you hear me?
We can now. Go ahead.
Sorry, it takes too long for my computer to log on to Zoom. Sorry about that. My name's Sean Sullivan. I live across the street at 9 Prospect Street. My house is a nationally registered historic house. And some people have reiterated the points, so I won't go over them again, but this is not subordinate to the original building, and the size and the scale of it, the size is just getting larger. And so it's getting less and less subordinate, even though there has been some changes to the massing and some of the aesthetics to it. I still see that the same problem still exists. As far as the scale goes, when the bank's showing scale, it's showing scale to some of the larger, newer houses in the neighborhood, and not my house, which is a historic one. The base of my house, the street back then was as close to the subterranean cars in the underground as it is to the sidewalk today. So it was a couple feet lower, and the eave line of my house is at or below the bottom of the windows of this. So like Mr. Coulter-John was saying about Mark's house, it towers above it. And so the scale and the peak of this house, from my perspective across the street, it's still way too tall and way too massive. And I hope that the Historical Commission would take note of that, since my house was there 80 years before the bank original structure was there. And that, this is a different circumstance for a house of that age and that size.
Right.
Thanks for your
Thank you.
consideration.
It looks like in this rendering we're looking at right now, perhaps your house is that yellow one that you can barely see poking in at the left.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the top of my windows are below the bottom of their windows, and the bottom of the windows are approximately at the eave line of my house.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you.
Okay, we're almost through. I see one more hand at this point, and that is the hand of Mr. Dave Tibbetts. Did you want to make a comment, sir? If you do, you need to unmute yourself locally.
Yes, I would.
So go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. I'll in the interest of time, it's very late, 8:54 according to my clock.
Yep.
I'm Dave Tibbetts, 26 Titcomb Street. Lived in Newburyport since 1974, back before it was trendy, and am a proud trustee of the bank for the last 17 years. And I've been following this process very assiduously since it began. I have to say that with a little bit of reluctance, frankly, that I think the current iteration is an improvement over the original plan. So I thank our neighbors and abutters for prodding the bank to do what I think has developed into a better project. And I urge the Historic Commission to recognize the efforts that have been made. I think the architectural team has done a terrific job of trying to reflect the historic neighborhood and be consistent with the original building. And yeah, you have a challenge ahead of you, but I appreciate your patience as well, and the members of the Historical Commission. And thank you all for your many hours of service.
Thank you, Mr. Tibbetts. Okay, and I don't think there are any other hands. Thank goodness. Let me just do a quick check, at least see if I can. Looks like, okay, looks like I can officially close the public comment period. Whew. And yes, it's almost 9 o'clock. So before I turn it over to my fellow commissioners, as promised, I can give just a few minutes for any responses that if the architect, Mr. Christopher, or the attorney for the applicant has any brief response to any of those comments, we can allow you to make those now.
Christopher, do you have anything else you would like to add before I say anything?
No, I mean, what I would like to add is, we spend a lot of time being as sensitive to all of the things that we've heard, and there is a huge range of scale of buildings on this street, and I urge the commission to see our approach here as being sensitive to even a house like Mark Griffin's house, or a house like the previous commenter's house, who are absolutely, they are very, very small houses in the scale of even the larger neighborhood. But when we're talking about putting a commercial building in a neighborhood that has hugely varied scales, I think the design that we produced does exactly that within its site. It has small scale elements that bring things down to the level of those buildings, including the 1-story mass on the corner of Otis Place in Prospect. I urge the commission to really see how this new design tries to hear all of those voices and respond to them. I think it's hard to hear the comments that we're kind of boldly not listening to anyone. I think this scheme is a direct outflow from all of the things that we've noted and heard the neighbors say. This scheme directly responds to all of those things. So I really do hope that the commissioners can see that. Thank you.
Okay. And Ms. Mead, did you want to add anything?
I don't need to. I think Christopher just said it all. I will let it go to the commission.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I turn to my fellow commissioners. And let me first ask this question: where this is a large project, it's a complex project. There's a lot to discuss and ponder, and it's 9 o'clock essentially. Do you guys want to continue now? What I'm thinking is that we don't need to have another round of public commentary and so forth, but we might want to, kick off our next meeting with the deliberation of this, but I'm willing to listen to what you guys think we ought to do. I see Ms. Picnic has a hand up.
I would really appreciate more time. I think that going from the conceptual design to these detailed plans with elevations requires more time for me to really do what's fair to the applicant. I would feel rushed at this point, but I'd like to hear also from others on the commission.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Patricia. And I should, just so that the applicant understands, Patricia has a very busy schedule, teaching several courses but via Zoom. So it's a very exhausting schedule as well. So that's been part of the, reason why the time requirement. And for a retired guy, I've been kind of busy myself, but that's beside the point. Anyone else on any of my other fellow commissioners have a position or comment on this? And I see Mr. Fay has raised a hand.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think maybe twofold. It would give us more time to look at what Patricia talked about. But I also think that it would, I don't know. I feel like I'm not a neighbor. It may be that the bank wants to continue a dialogue with the neighbors. Because I'm hearing the same thing, which is, when you look at it sort of from the streetscape, at a certain sort of vantage point, as I'm looking at it on a different screen here, it looks like it fits, and then you get that aerial view, and it just looks huge. And I just also like to recognize that it was Joe Morgan from this commission that's essentially suggested kind of flipping the script a little bit. So I want to make sure that maybe pat on the back a little bit, but I'm just saying, I think maybe more time would allow the bank to, I'm still perplexed by why. I thought it was a very interesting point that one of the abutters made in this time of COVID, as more and more people are re-examining whether or not they want to go to work in a larger building, whether those companies are shutting those buildings down as they are all across the country, and more people are working from home. Does the bank maybe want to scale back a little bit? So I thought that was a very astute comment that was made by one of the neighbors. Maybe something to consider.
Okay, and for those who might not have understood the comment about Joe Morgan, what he's referring to by flipping the script is the initial proposal to consider a more residential appearance for the part of the project that's back towards Otis Place and further down along Prospect Street. And I see Mr. Morgan has raised a hand. Did you want to make a comment, Joe?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Chair. I feel that the architect, ARC, has done a very good job in interpreting both the program and its expression relative to at least my prior comments, which were its aspect from State Street, its subordination to the historical building, mainly due to the fact that it's at the rear of the site, so that perspective actually diminishes its impact at State Street. The transition it makes from the brick context and the to the now what looks like more of a residential a scaled building along Prospect. It's a change of materials and it's massing. I know many people still think it's oversized, but I certainly along the elevational perspective along the street has definitely been reduced from 30 to 25 feet. And I think that's a lot. That's that sun angle and that shadow and I think that they've done some other things that they actually haven't really talked about. They haven't had time. I think I agree with Commissioner Pecknick. It'd be nice if we all had some time to look at some of the details and make some more constructive contributions at the next meeting. But I feel that from my perspective that they have done a good job and really acted in good faith and tried to produce a really nice product here. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Let me just make a note here. What I'm thinking is I'm trying to balance our needs to give this a fair hearing along with the applicant's needs to try to nip along. And I see kind of two possibilities here. One, and Ron, I'll get to you in a second. Let me finish my thought. One is to have further deliberations in 2 weeks, or another possible route would be if we just want to spend some time on each on our own, pondering this, and then send basically we don't. it's not a question of having to take a vote. I need to write up a report. So it's quite possible we can do something similar we did last time, where you guys send me your observations, your views, your opinions, and I try to consolidate those into a report. So those are two possibilities that I see. So Ron, I do see your hand up. Did you want to make a comment?
Just thank you, Glenn. Just to reiterate what Joe just said, I find myself in agreement with that. And more than that, I feel just a tiny bit more encouraged than I have been. Just in the last 10 or 15 minutes, there have been several comments. I don't know if everybody noticed them, or maybe I was just looking for them desperately. The fact is, we've been polarized here, and we both have our opinions. Both sides have their opinions, and there hasn't been a lot of evidence on giving and taking on either end, I don't believe. But just in the last 15 minutes, I have seen some vague signs that there is at least some interest in what I'll call a third way, okay? The third way is designed to break up polarized conversations like this one. And, you know, maybe Glenn, to your point, it would be good to take a little more time and see if that avenue can't be explored more.
I'm going to tell somebody.
Because we're going nowhere now.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, I see now, Ron and Joe, your hands are still up. Not sure if that's an artifact. And Patricia, I think your hand newly went up. Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I just want to say I would prefer to talk as a commission in 2 weeks rather than to send our remarks, just so that it's a transparent, you know, public process.
Right.
Because members of the public have shown up this evening, and the applicant has brought in folks to show up this evening, and so I feel that that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, and I actually had similar thoughts as well for the same reasons. And even if we don't allow public comment, it's still a public meeting, and anyone is free to attend and listen in and so forth. Okay, would someone like to make a motion to that effect?
I'm frozen out. It's not going to follow me.
I just heard some mumbling. I wasn't sure what that was.
Mr. Chair?
That sounds like Ms. Mead.
Yes. May I speak?
Okay.
So I appreciate Ms. Pecknick's comments relative to not deliberating by sending you comments, because in addition to being transparent, it actually would violate the open meeting law. So all the deliberations need to happen in public. The bank made the deadline for the commission to submit its application last week. Those deadlines aren't established by us, they're established by you in order to provide you all ample time to review materials prior to meetings. I understand folks are busy, but it happens to be the job that you raised your hand for. So we hope to have the commission be able to look at it. The bank is scheduled to go back to the planning board for their October 21st meeting. It has worked very hard. We brought everybody in the summer to look at these concept plans, and these have been obviously further refinements of those plans. And the bank has worked very hard, as has been evident by the conversation, to address a number of the points raised by both the planning board and the historic commission. So we would urge the commission to continue to deliberate this evening over what has been provided to you in accordance with your regulations, so that it can have an advisory opinion to the planning board for the next meeting. This is the third time. I know that the proposals have been different, but we've come back to the board because the planning board has asked us to do so, and we are here. And we'd like the commission to deliberate and do its job, since we are all here this evening.
Yep. Well, given the fact that it's, first of all, I hear what you're saying, Attorney Mead, and I don't really disagree, especially on the technicalities of whether the deadlines have been met. So I don't see the applicant at fault here. However, I think the preponderance of the weight of the, we're still not through the rest of our agenda. There are still several more items, as I think you know. It's 10 after 9. I haven't been feeling well for a couple of days myself, although that's irrelevant. But I don't think that let me rephrase that. I do think that if we have our formal deliberations in 2 weeks, it's probably going to have a minimal impact on your overall schedule. Now that's conjecture on my part, I readily admit, but I think it's not, unreasonable to think that. So I hear you, and but I'm still, hearing from many of my fellow commissioners that we want to continue. But we'll need to have a motion and a vote on that. So we'll see where everybody comes down. So some of the people, either like Christopher or Patricia, would you like to phrase a motion that we can all vote on and see where this all comes out? Hello.
Patricia, you want to go ahead?
I would like to make a motion that we deliberate on this matter at our next meeting.
I second that.
Okay. All right, 1 second.
Morning,
Making
too.
some notes here. Okay, so let's do our usual roll call. So since you're on the mic, Christopher, your vote?
Yes.
Okay, and Patricia, your vote?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Ronziemba?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Peter, that's our Peter, you're accused, so we'll skip over you. And the chair will vote yes as well. The one last question for the attorney representing the bank. Do you expect that you would have any other material that you would like us to consider beyond what you have presented today? And
We have all the material. You have everything that we have presented.
Okay. All right. All right. I feel it appropriate that I apologize for the delay. It's not your fault. But I think that's just what we need to do. So I'll stand by that. So we're going to move on to 123 State Street. I believe that is another one where Ms. Mead is representing Crane Properties on this. We had met on this matter previously and voted that it's historically significant and preferably preserved, and had a number of questions and so forth and requests for additional detail on the plans. So, and I believe new plans or modified plans, whatever you want to call it, have been submitted, correct? Well, I know it's correct because I saw them, right? So Andy or Caitlin, whoever's presenting, okay, there we go. Ms. Mead, would you like to do a quick rundown of what the updates are?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Lisa Mead on behalf of Crane Properties LLC, and with me this evening is Bill Nolan, the architect from Savoy Nolan. And as you noted, this is about approving the changes to the plans. The board approved the form of the addition in the back and instituted the demolition delay. So I'm gonna, without further ado, turn it over to Bill to go over the more specific details. I think it's important to note that the applicant agreed to reuse the arched windows and put them in the back, and also has changed the siding from what was proposed to wood clapboard with corner boards. And I'll let Bill start to move through the plan. So if you could go to slide 3, please, Andy.
Okay, Mr. Nolan, where are you?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now. Please proceed.
Okay, I will be brief because I know it's late.
Thank you.
So the existing demolition plans haven't changed from the last submission. If we want to go to the third slide, I think it's the front elevation. From what we took away from the board's comments, they just wanted some more detail on what's there currently and what's existing. So we provided a picture of the existing corner of the front elevation showing the arch tarp dormers and roof edge conditions and basically the architectural woodwork that we're seeking to retain. I fixed the dormer locations. There were 2 errant dormers drawn on the proposed conditions as pointed out by one of your board members.
Right.
I believe I fixed that. And I also labeled which dormers were staying, labeled existing. If you go to, you'll notice on the front, all 3 of the existing dormers are labeled existing. The architectural woodwork, for the entire front facade is going to remain. So I tried to list, as many features as I could on the elevations. Hopefully it's crystal clear. But it's frankly a lot easier just to tell you what we're doing differently. And really the only thing we're doing differently is the existing roof slate has been painted. It's hard to tell on that photograph, but you can see kind of a black smudge on the left side of the front dormer. That's actually paint peeling off of the slate. I'm not sure why someone would paint slate, but our intention is to strip it and bring it back to its natural color. Once it's stripped and back to its natural color, we might understand why someone painted it, in which case, we'll just address it at that point. But the intention is the existing slate to be returned back to its natural color and remain intact. If we're missing tiles, we'll replace them in kind.
Good.
The freeze board and shadow board, integral gutter, crown molding, and decorative brackets that make up the whole freeze band or the lower mansard roof edge is going to remain as is. The intent is to refinish it, so strip the paint to the extent that we can and paint it and make it look as nice as possible. Through the process, as the contractor goes through, it's possible that we'll come across components that are rotted beyond repair, in which case we'll cut those out and replace them in kind. But the intent is hopefully there's no rot anywhere and we can just maintain what's there. I did notice working our way down, we're going to remove the existing asbestos siding. And per the board's request, we're going to go with cedar clapboards, 4-inch exposure. It's the one difference in the proposed elevations is the introduction of corner boards. I did a little bit of research, talked with the builder, and came to the conclusion that woven corners with today's wood is not a good scenario with the cupping and the detailing. It's not recommended. So we went with the corner boards, which is actually historically correct on the examples that I've seen. The window casings, the existing window casings, the windows are the same. We're replacing them 2/2 simulated divided lights with the more of an elevate wood interior. I believe it's an aluminum clad exterior, same as what we proposed before. The existing window casings are going to remain, unless otherwise noted. And the only place that it's noted otherwise is the doors for the existing bump outs are going to be replaced with new windows that match the existing windows on the front. That will get a new casing to match in kind, a wood casing to match the same profile as the existing windows. So all of the existing windows, casings, and sills are going to remain. The 2 places where we're changing that on the front elevation are where we're replacing the doors with windows, and those will get new wood casings and sill details to match the existing. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just 2 quick comments. between our previous discussion of this and tonight, I discovered there's a house in my neighborhood that appears to be hardy plank, and I was shocked that those boards appear to be cracking. Like mid-board. I'm not sure if it's because if it's an older house, maybe it was the house is settling, or maybe it wasn't installed properly or whatever. So I just thought I'd mention that. And the other thing is I did also some research on this period, and both in my research in books and so forth, and cruising around Newburyport, I could not find any house of this period that did not have corner boards, and often they were accentuated either by being wide, almost like pilasters, or rusticated, or accentuated in some way. Now, I'm not saying you need to do that, but I'm just saying that, yeah, I think I'm glad to see that you incorporated corner boards. I think that is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Unfortunately, we can't, and I did see examples where they had, larger corner boards than what we're showing here.
Right.
I have seen plenty of examples where they had 6-inch corner boards like what we're proposing here. Given the amount of glass that we have in the front, or the minimal amount of clapboards, the larger boards aren't going to work here.
Yeah.
So I think the 6-inch ones are the appropriate size.
So I'm sorry. So you're using 6-inch?
Yeah.
Okay. I assume that's nominal 6-inch.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Were you done?
No, I was just I had 2 more things to point out.
Okay.
The front portico is going to remain as is. The columns and brackets and roof edge details are going to remain, and we're reusing the existing double door. It's going to be refinished, but it'll be the actual double door. I actually went out to the site today. I was anticipating a question about the roof material for the arch, which is unfortunately a little bit more complicated than I was hoping for. It appears the front arches are some type of metal. It's black. I'm going to assume that it has some type of a coating on that, or I can't tell you exactly what the material is. It is metal. It looks as if it's a copper type detail, but I've never known copper to turn black. So unless it had some finish on it.
Yeah, actually, you can turn it black with the application of vinegar. I discovered from a slate roofer who was doing my roof with copper thing. But anyway, that's beside the point. It may be copper, maybe something else. Give it a good scratch.
It's going to remain anyway, so it's kind of
okay.
So it's going to remain on the front. On the sides, it's actually a bitumen material, like basically an asphalt shingle, but it's in sheet good. In which case, we're going to assess it, and I don't think the owner's interested in doing more work than they need to do. So if it's in good shape, it's going to remain. But if it's not, then it would be repaired. Right now, it's bitumen, and I would or asphalt product. I would say on the side dormers and in the rear dormers, the new ones in particular, we would just do the rubber that we're planning on doing for the top, seeing that the existings don't have the metal on them right now. So that's our plan. The existing portico in the front, the details there, the railings are going to be reconditioned. The existing posts are going to be reconditioned. I did notice today while I was out there that some of the woodwork on the post will need to be repaired due to rot. So that will be repaired and replaced in kind. As with any architectural woodwork on the house that is deemed unrepairable. The existing foundation for the main Second Empire Cottage building is brick. It's going to remain that. There was a question about the lattice work on the bump outs. You can see it very little here on the front elevation. So if you want to move to one of the side elevations, we're proposing to rip off that lattice. It's in disrepair anyways, and replace it with new vertical boards. We're hoping to use composite boards for those because it will come in contact or close contact with the earth. So it's vertical boards with a half-inch gap in between them. The foundation for the bump out on the right side, the one that we're adding on to, actually has brick piers supporting it. Those are going to remain and just be covered up with the new skirting on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we want to move to the side, I think it's pretty much the same comments that I had with the front for both the sides. The two existing dormers are going to remain on either side. There's a total of 10 dormers on this house, arch top dormers on this house. We're proposing to salvage 2 of them and relocate them to the back of the house and add 1 more. So the house will actually have 1 additional dormer than the existing house does. So if we can go to the back, I think that will probably conclude what I have to discuss and open it up for questions if you have any. The 2 dormers on the back on the left-hand side, those are the ones that are being salvaged. I spoke with the builder, and we're optimistic that we can recycle the dormers. But obviously, with this work, it's extremely old, it's extremely delicate. So there's no guarantees that when we're taking this down, there won't be some pieces that will have to be repaired or rebuilt. But it's in our best interest because this is detailed work, it's expensive work, and this stuff can't go down to Home Depot and buy it. It will have to be all fabricated. So it really is in our best interest to salvage as much as possible and bring it forward. And that is the intent. The dormer to the right is existing, but the dormer and side profile to the right is on the new addition, and that will be a brand new dormer built to mimic the existing dormers to the best of our abilities. And I think that addressed hopefully addressed the majority of your questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Nolan. I just had, you confused me on just one thing, and that's on the roofing. I think when you were talking about a sort of an asphalt-like roofing, was that the flatter roof area above the slate that you were referring to?
No, it's the arch top roof.
Okay, the arches over the dormers?
Yeah, only on the sides. The front 3 dormers are metal, and there's evidence of a soldered joint and a clean detail. The side dormers, once they roll over to the sides and the rear, and I am taking zoomed in photographs with an iPhone. Unfortunately, I haven't been up on the roof to actually touch this material, but there's nails on the eave profile, roofing nails, and there's glinting from the material that you would see in an asphalt product, and I've seen that before.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So the flatter part of the actual top roof is what?
Can't be seen. And I haven't been up there, so I can't tell you for
certain.
certain.
Okay, so you're not even sure what's there now.
Yeah, I have. Okay. When I went back, I know that was a question. I looked at it. I took more pictures, and I cannot. None of the pictures that I have, I didn't take any from a drone or anything. None of the picture. Well, you laugh, but I actually have done that in the past. So so I couldn't tell you what's up there because it can't be seen from anywhere on this property.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nolan. That was it for my questions. So fellow compadres, any questions or comments for our applicant on this? Mr. Ziemba, your hand went up first, I think.
Yes, I have no questions at all, but I did want to say that I think Mr. Dolan did a very good job of responding to the issues that were raised the last time we discussed this project.
Right.
And this is a complicated job, I can see, and I think he's come out at the other end pretty well. So I would be inclined to. What are we looking for?
Give it the green light, so to speak.
Give it the green light. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Ron. Am I cutting you off, or are you done?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Mr. McNamee, I see another hand.
I agree with Ron's comments. I think that the architect has been very responsive. I like what I see. I liked what I saw a couple of weeks ago, but our comments have been incorporated. So That's terrific to see. One thing that I would ask, and it's conceivably a minor detail, but it's a detail that stands out for me. You talked about the reconditioning of the front railing, and reconditioning what you could. You didn't know whether or not you'd encounter rot or anything like that. I would encourage you, if you encounter rot, or even if you don't encounter rot, to recondition it with something more appropriate to the period of the property. That railing, I'm zoomed in on it on another screen, and I was zoomed in on it a couple of weeks ago too, was probably a replacement of the original, probably put on at the same time as the asbestos siding. And it's pretty plain, and it doesn't do the property any justice. So if there's room in the project, I would encourage you to consider a period railing, and if that railing that's there has to go away, I would strongly encourage it. That's it.
Noted. Now, Joe, you had a number of questions last time. Have all your concerns been responded to? Don't mean to put you on the spot. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm good with this. I think this is a great job of documenting the things that we requested. I believe it's all there from my memory. So thank you. Yep.
Okay. Well, Ron, your hand is still up. Did you have a further comment, or is that just your hand is still up? Oh, your hand is down. Okay. Would someone like to make a motion that we release the demo delay so that they can get a permit to begin working on this?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I think that was Ron, right?
Yep.
And I'll second it. This is Joe.
Okay. So we'll do our usual roll call. So Ron, your vote?
Yes.
1 second here. Okay, Joe?
Yes.
Patricia? Did we lose? Where's Patricia? And Caitlin, Ron. All right, well, while we're waiting for Patricia, Christopher?
I wasn't here last time, so I'll abstain.
Oh, okay.
That's the thing to do.
Did we get Peter?
You did not, and I vote yes.
Okay, and the chair is yes. So that makes 1, 2, 3, 4 yeses, even without Patricia and the abstention. I wonder what happened to Patricia. Okay, so I will notify the planning board that we will release the project to continue. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Correspondence, I don't think we need to spend too much time on this right now, but I think we can talk about this separately outside of a meeting in maybe a little subgroup or something about the matching grant. I think, as I understand it, the Mass Historical Commission has some matching grants. They're not sure if it'll be 50% or not because they don't have their final budget, but there is a deadline of November 16th, and they're entertaining, historic preservation related grants, and we're thinking maybe they can match that 15,000 we have in CPA grant that was already secured a couple of years ago. So for the sake of time, I'm going to kind of postpone further discussion on that, but I will, is there someone who would like to kind of raise a hand to be willing to kind of talk to me about that? I know in the past, it was something that Patricia was interested in, but she seems to have vanished. All right, well, if you do, just send me an email or something, and we'll talk about that. Have you reviewed the minutes from 9/24? I know I have, and there are no changes for me to propose. Is there a motion to approve those minutes from September 24?
So moved.
Okay, I think that was Peter.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, your vote, Peter? Oh, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I didn't quite catch who that was.
Ron.
Okay, thanks, Ron. So Peter, your vote?
Yes.
Okay, Ron?
Yes.
Okay, Joe?
Yes.
Okay, Chris?
I'll abstain again. I wasn't here last
Oh,
time.
okay, that's right. And the chair is yes, so we'll approve those with 4 yes votes. And is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, thank you, Joe. I'll temporarily step out of the chair role to second it. Your vote, Joe? I assume you're in
Yes.
favor, Joe? Okay, thank you. Christopher?
Yes.
Okay. Ron?
Yes.
Okay. Peter?
Yes.
Me is a yes. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's all of us that are left. So I think that's a wrap. Thank you, Caitlin and Andy, for running the meeting. Appreciate it very much. Thank you all for sticking it out for this late hour. Yep. And I bid you all a good night, and we'll talk again formally in 2 weeks, if not sooner.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you,
Good night.
everybody.
Oh,
Good
there
night.
you are.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a good night.